Greetings, family. What's going on? This is Kofi Ofori Boateng, author of Notes to My Sister, Let Him Serve You. And this is the Saturday or Friday Q&A with Denai and Kofi. Takes place every Saturday around this time. We're a little late this morning. Mr. Jones, yo, you're so hard to get a hold of, man. So during the week, we both have lives on our respective pages. I have mine at 6:30 Central African time. D has hers, I think, a little earlier than that. And on Saturdays, we get together. We have conversations on hot button issues. Last week, we talked about value. This week, we're talking about, single income families, which is a follow-up from last week's conversation around value, the value that we bring into relationships, into marriage, into our families, and how that value does not always have to be monetarily quantified, but it can be qualified in other ways. But today we're going to talk expressly about single income homes, with two parents, one income, how they make it work. And D has got some, listen, D's a researcher of note. D's a researcher of note. My dad was a researcher, being a university librarian. And research is always this thing. And I thought I learned a few things, but yo, my goodness, D's a problem. So this is going to be a lit conversation. So if you want to learn some tips, and maybe you just have some, they had me at work with it. Okay, all right, sir. Now we'll try again. If you want some tips on how to, manage a home off one income, because this is something that puts a lot of strain on relationships, puts a lot of strain on marriages. Having a single income, one partner working, or one's a stay-at-home, mom, that puts a lot of pressure on relationships. And in our modern times, an overwhelming number of people are of the opinion that, both parties in the marriage need to work and need to bring in an income. And there is a lot to be said for that. But at the same time, there are many different income. Without the wife being employed by a corporation, having a regular job and so on. Hey, Denai, what's up?
Well, hello there. How art thou? Hello there.
Say what's up to the people at home, Denai. Say what's up to the people at home.
What up, people at home? How y'all doing? Hello, people at home. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Hello.
Yes. Today we're going to be talking about single income in the family.
Good Friday.
Good Friday, yes. That sounds actually nice. It sounds really creepy. Like I was going to sound like always. Anyway.
What happened?
No, like the voice I was trying to pull off didn't. Oh my goodness, Mr. David Burris.
You tried and it didn't work.
Didn't work. Mr. David Burris is joining us today. Goodness gracious, this is an honor. This is your fault, D.
It's my fault. Don't blame stuff on me. I'm like, what? Mr. David Burris is a wonderful, wonderful man. Who thank you for joining us, Mr. Burris. Hi, Mr. Jones. Hi, Miss Yvette. How's it going? You were saying? I'm sorry. We interrupted your introduction. You were saying?
Yeah. So I was basically talking about single incomes and how it doesn't have to be a deal breaker in a relationship and how it doesn't have to be a deal breaker in a marriage. And I was telling them how much research you've done on the topic.
Why are you setting me up like that? Don't do that.
Because you've been chomping at the bit. You've been raring to go. So,
wow.
I'm just going to...
Wow.
Cover myself.
That's
how I cover myself.
Yeah, just set me up. Dig a grave for me to dig myself out of. I see you, sir. No, all we are having a wonderful off-the-cusp conversation like normal. And no, we decided like a week ago that we were going to talk about single income homes, because some of the stuff that happened in our Q&A last week was there was some kind of pushback on women who choose to be stay-at-home moms, kind of with an assertion, which a lot of people believe, which is that you cannot do single income homes anymore. Like, you have to have two incomes in order for you to have, you know, a proper family today. Like, there's no way to do it. Like, realistically, it cannot be done. And so I was saying that's actually not true. But I wasn't able to go into any detail because, you know, for time and for the subject matter, because last week that's not what we were focused on. But basically letting you guys know that there are entire communities all across the U.S., oftentimes religious. So you'll find pockets of Christian communities. You'll find pockets of like Mormon communities, pockets of Muslim communities, of Jewish communities, etc. You find oftentimes that they tend to be under religious headings, but it's not even always religious. Sometimes it's just a movement of people who value having a husband work and having a wife stay home. And they don't regard that as sort of a backwards or an antiquated way of doing family. And so they band together and learn how to do this. And especially with the internet, the way that it is right now, a lot of this is led by mommy bloggers. So there are a lot of mommy bloggers that are stay-at-home moms, and they share a ton of information about how to budget, how to, you know, what to do for schooling, what to do for medical care, what to do for, you know, for nights out with the husband, nights out with the family, how to, you know, how to basically make sure that you can do this. Because particularly if you're coming from a typically standard American dream type, we're a part of the rat race, we have two incomes, everything has been about us being consumers, then you're right. If you're coming from that mindset, the transition into going on to one income and having one of you guys stay at home is probably going to be pretty, you know, rough, if you will, because there are sacrifices that have to take place. But my point was just to assert to you all that it's not only is it possible, it happens all over the place, all over this country, and yes, in America and in cities where the cost of living is pretty high, people are doing this. They're figuring out ways how to do it. So
for me, Indigo Major just hit the nail on the head with the point she made about tell your money where to go, or you'll wonder where it went. Absolutely. And yeah, and with this being, you know, a Christian space and a scriptural space, it's very important for us to be mindful of that. The Bible tells us to speak to our mountains, you know,
yeah.
And like this is, you know, like a challenge that we're talking about, you know, or problems or obstacles that we're talking about. And if you can talk your obstacles, you can definitely talk to the tools or the resources that you have at your disposal as well. You know, when you have money, you're supposed to tell money where to go. You've been given dominion. And for me, I think it's important that we start with that mindset, the mindset of dominion. Far too often, when we enter into relationships, or when we consider relationships, we consider getting married, we consider starting a family, what we tend to start with is not our position of power or our authority in God, but it usually tends to be, okay, what is the environment telling me? Is it the right environment for me to get married in? Is it the right environment for me to start a family in? Is it the right environment for me to start, what's the term? Building my business, building my kingdom. We look at our circumstances and we look at our environments far too much. We don't stop to consider what has been placed within us and what has been given to us to run with. And God is very clear, you know, your gift will make room for you. That's the first. Secondly, you know, his plans for you are not to destroy you or to harm you, but to give you a future and a hope. You know, so when you approach it from that paradigm and that perspective, and that's not to say that we should go into it without consideration, without planning, without strategy or anything like that.
we definitely should. We should
No,
also
I think
understand.
that's one of the things that you will find most prevalent is that families that decide to do this go in with a great deal of planning because realistically, just like Chris said, if you don't plan, excuse me, if you fail to plan, you're going to plan to fail. Basically, I know that's not what she said, but basically she was saying, plan on doing what it is that you need to do and put the energy toward that. And in saying that, there are a few brief points I can go over of things that people, if you're thinking about becoming a single income family, a few bullet points to just kind of think of, a few different points. So the first point is that if you if you do not, basically you need to plan for this. And by planning for this, Kofi and I have spoken a lot about how in the West we do relationships completely wrong because there's this whole time, I guess, during your 20s when everybody's just trying to play and then they want to settle down when they're in the 30s. And this is one of the ways that if you were planning, not just for your education, because we all plan for that. We all plan to, go to high school, and then we plan to go to college. And then if we want to do advanced learning, then we go to grad school or professional school, doctor, lawyer, whatever, and then PhDs. So you plan for that because it's going to affect the way that you live the rest of your life. But people do not plan for the way that they want to live financially. So, which is very interesting because, sidebar, by the way, people who do plan to live financially, I know people who are 32 years old who are not 32 years old and retired. And what that means is they no longer have to work for a paycheck and punch somebody else's time clock. They now have enough investments going and bringing in residual income because they planned for this, that they no longer have to punch a time clock. It doesn't mean that they're Tiger Woods and it doesn't mean that they're Shaq. And by the way, they did these things without a ball, without a mic in their hand. And I'm just saying, and I say that because that's what the society feeds us, is that the only way for you to become financially successful or financially secure, if you will, is you either have to have a ball in your hand, you have to have a mic in your hand, you have to be on camera as an actor or a singer, or it has to be entertainment or it has to be sports. They don't teach us about business. And so in planning, one of the first things that you should be doing, I would say, if we would start teaching our children to model while they are also getting that first degree or that second degree or whatever that is, that they should also be working on, like, for the rest of their 20s, paying down their debts. And not just paying down their debts, but amassing proper debt, like a house, for instance. Yeah, I said in the last session that there are two things that that separate middle and upper class families in the West from those who are poor and working class. And they are, do you own a home? And more importantly, do you own property? Because you can own your home, but if you get a little ahead of the game and you own property in addition to your home, now you're really doing things. But do you own property and do you own stocks? So while you don't have a family and you are, like, all this stuff we're talking about, preparing for marriage, preparing for life, preparing for family, instead of running around, single going, I'm having my whole phase, which is probably going to end up with a child, which is just going to be, a paycheck for 18 years. How about plan for that instead, so that by the time you have a child, your child is taken care of. If you're a husband, your wife is taken care of, and there's not so much stress on the marriage, and you guys can do things the way that you want to do them. But it's only going to happen if you plan. Go ahead.
Please go back and say that again, so that you plan so that
you plan so that you don't end up. You plan so that you get to do what you want to do instead of having to do what you have to do. In so many areas of my life, that's been what it is. It's all been about avoiding the end up, avoiding becoming a statistic, avoiding becoming whatever it was that they were telling us that's all that we're capable of. When the truth is, I'm watching everybody live these wonderful lives, and all you have to do is study it. Success leaves a trail. You can study all of your friends, no matter the race, no matter the class, etc., and success leaves a trail. So yes, the first thing I would say is, while you're in your 20s, you should be planning to be a wife or to be a husband if that's something you actually want to do, instead of just following like I said, the rat race, and you're gonna hear a lot of that in everything that I have to say, and I think in a lot of what Kofi has to say as well, is we're constantly gonna be challenging you guys to think outside of the box and to think more importantly or more specifically outside of the system, because the system is not your friend. You know what I mean? So yeah. So if in your 20s you're planning to be in a family, then that would look like, okay, you're in any major city right now. If you're in DC, if you're in LA, if you're in New York, if you're in Seattle and you're in school, if you're in freaking San Francisco, God forbid, I have a girlfriend who's got 2 daughters at Stanford. It's insane. And by insane, I mean, I just saw a report from a newspaper in San Francisco that said a lot of young people are renting out bunks in terms of like a bunk bed, but the bunks are $1,200. That's how much the rent is in San Francisco. You cannot afford to live there. It's Silicon Valley, and the tech companies have taken over, and you can't afford to live there. So you need to think about that as well. You know what I mean? Like, go into something that, like, if you're going into a city like that's just ridiculous. But go across the bay to Oakland and it's more affordable, you know? Having said that though, planning on being a property owner instead of just being a renter, you know, and thinking, okay, well, I don't need to purchase a home until I'm already a wife or I'm already a husband, you know, or I'm already in that state, puts you ahead of the game. You know what I mean? And I'll just say one little reason why. In the last 5 years in Los Angeles alone, I've been a renter. I'm also a homeowner, but I do both. So I'm a landlord with my home, and I rent in the city. And so I bought property a little bit further away. And the reason why I do that is because you have to own. The reason why they are speculating that African American net worth by the year 2050 is going to be $5 is because we don't own anything. And so even if you are renting, you still need to own something. You got to get into the game, because the ways that properties compound in terms of interest, and the way that equity builds, you can never get it back. It's literally just about time periods when the market goes up and you're either in there or you're not. And if you allow yourself to be intimidated by the information, which, by the way, they intentionally make it confusing, but it's really not that confusing, then you're going to be left out. Yes, $5. And it's $5 because we buy, and we don't buy assets. Thank you. We buy liabilities. We don't buy assets. So by that, a very simple explanation would be, all of our kids wear Nikes, but we don't own Nike stock. That's backwards. And the reason why is because we don't understand how the stock market works. As long as you guys are buying Nikes, you are guaranteeing that Nike is going to be in business. Therefore, you need to own, because you're the guarantee that they're not going out of business. You know what I mean? So there's nothing wrong with purchasing on one end. It's just, if you only purchase on this end, and then on the end where it actually grows your money, you don't own anything over there, then you're going to have a pair of tennis shoes on your feet. You know what I mean? You're going to have the car in the garage, and that's it. You know what I mean? And I say tennis shoes and cars because their value goes down the moment you take them out of the store. And with a house, the value goes up the moment you moved in. So owning your home and owning other homes is a very, very quick, easy, legal way to become very wealthy very quickly. Yes, sir.
Even if the house value depreciates when you move in, or when someone moves in, if you're renting it out, you're still ahead of the curve.
That's what a lot of people don't understand.
You're not losing money.
And a lot of people are saying, well, I can't afford, like, I live in LA, or I live in New York, or I live in San Francisco. I can't afford. Buy an hour away. What I'm trying to tell you all is you cannot afford not to own. It's what I was trying to say when I was talking about rents is, for the last 5 years, I've been in LA and I've been renting. Every year, the rent has gone up $100. So that's $500 in 5 years. So let's just go 5 more years out. Now it's $1,000 more in rent. That's a significant jump. But if I'm a homeowner and I bought a property, let's say $250,000, right? And I link my monthly payment in at $1,500, right? So I've got a 30-year fixed mortgage for $1,500. That mortgage is never going up. I linked in $1,500, or LinkedIn. I secured that for the next 30 years, all I have to pay is $1,500 a month. And as long as I can keep up with that payment, I'm good. What I'm telling you is one of the reasons why the net worth of Black people is going to go down is because we're renting everything. And if the rents just keep going up $100 a year for the next 15 years, can you afford that?
Can't save, you can't invest.
I can't afford it, which is why I'm investing. Yeah. Because I can afford the 30-year fixed at $1,500. But a 1-bedroom, you could get a beautiful 1-bedroom in my neighborhood 5 years ago. Now, $1,700 start. That's the reality. That's where it's going. And it's going that way like everywhere. And I'm just trying to say, if you don't get in, and if you don't start engaging or disengaging from the matrix and start thinking about finances in ways that are not just what they're feeding you, but you start finding out, like, you know, tapping into these communities of people who are figuring out how to do it. What I can tell you is you can do it on one income. You will learn how to, there will be sacrifices, particularly early on. The sacrifices will happen early on, and then later on, because your long-term plan will be wealth building for you and your family. So what you're usually going to do is use your husband's salary to purchase assets. You know what I mean? And so when I say like there are going to be sacrifices, yeah, I might turn my BMW in. You know what I mean? Why? $500, $700 payment, insurance, license. What's the other? What's the other thing? Registration. All of that stuff is an exorbitant amount of money that we think we have to live with because, you know, the dream says split level with 2 luxury cars in the driveway, and then there's like 2 of everything. And the truth is, those things are keeping you from being able to secure the wealth that you guys need and pointing those finances into resources that are actually going to bring you money versus just taking money out of the house. Thoughts?
If I could add to that, I just saw Onyx Diva's comment about average rent in a nice neighborhood is $1,800. One of the traps that we've gotten into specifically as Black people is this trap of wanting to move into the nice neighborhoods and purchase in the nice neighborhoods. It is killing us because there's several barriers to entry. The chief one being your skin color.
Yeah.
First of all, the price changes usually when you're Black. The interest rate that you get from the bank changes when you're Black because your credit risk profile is higher. You know, so
they even change our car insurance sometimes because they say we're higher.
Listen, like, look, our interest rates on our savings and investments is affected by our race. So everything, like the chips have been stacked against us hard.
Purposely and intentionally.
Yes. So what I'm seeing a lot of lately, especially stateside, and hopefully we'll start waking up to it down here too, is that more and more Black folk are buying in Black neighborhoods.
Yes.
And you're pooling their resources, you know, like they're getting together. We seriously need to start working together. Find like-minded friends.
Buy up the hood, yes.
Yeah. Find like-minded family members. Yeah. Pool your resources and buy multi-unit properties. Okay. Right. That way you have control over what happens with the property. You can put a security person there. You can bring around a security company that patrols that area. You can now start influencing what happens in the neighborhood as opposed to just letting your environment influence you. Yes or not?
Onyx Diva says, honestly, I'm not going to live in a bad neighborhood in Chicago. It can literally be deadly. I totally agree. But did you hear what I just said? I live in a great neighborhood. This is where I rent. I own an hour away. Why do I do that? Because I could afford it. And I can't even tell you, because I'm not going to say it on here, but let me just say, my house is worth 3 times as much as I bought it for 10 years ago. That's all equity.
In the hood, right?
So why is my net worth what it is? Why is it way more than $5? Because I own. I'm still renting. I live in the area I want to live in, but I own where I can afford. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is, again, think different. It's not going to be, the formula is not going to be what they're telling you. They're not going to tell you how to get ahead. You have to hack the system. You know what I mean? The system isn't made for you. I'm not telling you to buy a huge house in Chicago in an amazing area. Please don't do that. What I am saying is go into the hood and buy a couple houses in there, row houses especially, because they're going to be way less expensive. Now you own it. A couple of things are happening. One of the things that guaranteed is going to happen is the hoods all over this country are being gentrified. You're in there early. You don't sell until they offer you $1 million for that little piece of whatever, because that's what's going to happen, guaranteed. But now at least you're in there. So what do you do with it? You rent it out to somebody who wants to live there. They're going to pay rent to someone. It might as well be you. Now somebody else is paying your house off and you own a property. Your rent, that $1,800 a month, you will never be able to write that off. You get to write off the interest from that house. You get to write that off. There are all kinds of benefits for homeowners. There are home ownership, like there's first-time home buyers programs from everything. Just start Googling it. In addition to that, if you cannot afford, because one of the biggest obstacles to us not owning homes is we can't get the 20% down. You don't need 20% down. There are so many programs where you don't need it. I did 3% down, okay? So I'm saying, what am I saying? Even if you're thinking, well, I can't get a home because 20% down, I'm telling you, there are ways around everything. In addition to that, there are also grants. There are federal grants and federal funding. Google this stuff on down payment assistance. Just Google down payment assistance. There are grants you will never have to pay back, and they will just give you the money. Go in, qualify. So when I'm saying you can do all of this, I'm not saying people are teaching you how to do this. I'm saying what I'm teaching you right now, I've been in seminars, I've been in classes, I've had to go outside of the system and learn this stuff. And I'm giving you guys a whole lot of stuff for free that nobody's going to tell you. And then generations of us are not owning, we don't figure out how to do it. Or the thing I hate, and I'm sorry, I'm going to let you in here. I just want to finish this point. The other thing that I really, really hate is we will own. Grandmama has a house in the hood. Grandmama dies. The house is completely paid off. She gives it to the 3 kids, and the 3 kids sell it immediately. And I'm like, dude, and I've seen this happen so many different times. In the house, maybe when grandmama dies, it's worth $400,000. But right now, it's worth $3 million. But they just got so happy over $400,000, you know, that they don't understand. The house is paid off. Rent it out. Rent it out. Why? Whatever you bring in is income. You know what I mean? And if you do sell grandmama's house, which you should not until they offer you what it's worth, because the truth, like I said, gentrification, study it. Look at what's happening. We need to own in the hood, because all that's happening is other people are coming in, they're buying up the hood, and then we can't afford it anymore. And that's exactly what's happening. We won't be able to afford it. It's going to get nicer. It's going to get better. It's happening all over the nation. It might take a little while, but that's happening. Okay. I'm sorry. Keep going.
And the thing is, we don't have to
retire early, Onyx. That's true. They want to retire early. I'm sorry. Final. If you do sell grandma's house, I'm sorry, just to end that point. If you do sell grandma's house, use the money as a down payment to put into another house. Do not go on a shopping spree. Okay, I'm done.
Wanda, I saw your comment about, you know, property in the Bay Area and in Oakland being expensive. Here's the great thing. You don't necessarily have to buy in your city. So
that's my point.
You can check out other you know, cities with decent populations, with a decent
Sacramento.
economy. Yeah.
There's a bunch of places up in Northern Carolina. There's a bunch of places in Northern California, because I've taken road trips up and down, where they are planning communities, and you can still buy for $150,000, $250,000. You just gotta look. You gotta think outside of the box. Rent that to a nice young family, but you're the owner. You have to own.
What? Okay, so like, I want to share a little bit of my. After my divorce, I had to start from scratch. Okay, a lot of my friends were moving into really nice neighborhoods, buying amazing properties in really nice neighborhood. I had to cut my cloth according to my size, and I bought in the hood, and I got laughed at by quite a few friends. I live in the hood, but here's a trade-off. I got a bigger property for less.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm under less pressure. Okay. My property is still like already. I bought in 2014. Mm-hmm. Already the value's gone up by about 375,000 rand. Okay. And my repayments are next to nothing considering the size of the property. So it's. Like Danai said, you have to think outside the box. Far too many of us are putting ourselves under pressure to keep up with the Joneses and to keep up with appearances. It's not really about appearances. It's about sacrifice. If like I bought this one property here, because of how much I bought it for, it's easier for me to buy a second property. Okay. I have two girls, so that means they're both covered within a space of 5 years. They both have properties within a space of 5 years.
That they're going to inherit.
That they're going to inherit. By the time we move out of here, when I get married again, it's going to be a family home. Once you have the family home, you're renting out 2 properties in the hood. Okay? Those 2 properties are going to pay themselves off, and then they're going to pay off the family home.
Can I just say, just on that little point, those 2 properties, if you do your deals right, 9 times out of 10 are going to give you a little bit of money. Maybe it's only $100, but a little bit of money every month too that's going to go into your pocket. So think of that. Someone is paying off your house that you own. When it's over, whether it's a 15-year or a 30-year, that's a cash property. Something happens, there's an emergency with one of your kids, or they're getting married, or you want to buy them a house or whatever, you sell that, you give them the money. Now they're starting off with like $100,000 on their own. This is how we bless kids with legacy, with inheritance. Okay, keep going.
But I'll take it a step further, D, because like you make a very powerful point. I'll take it a step further and say, don't sell that property if your child is looking to own another property. And when Dee was speaking to the 20-year-olds, those in their 20s, one of the biggest mistakes we make is we move out of our parents' homes because we're trying to get involved in all kinds of debauchery outside of our parents' home. When you're in your parents' home, you don't get up to half the foolishness you do when you're on your own, which means you don't go out as much, you don't spend as much on friends, you save, okay? You're more responsible. While you're there, while you're in there, take the money that you're going to spend on partying, take the money you're going to spend on rent, take the money you're going to spend on, keeping up with your friends, and purchase a property. So that by the time you get married, like Danai was saying, you're not paying rent in your parents' home, but you're contributing towards the household expenses. Hopefully, at that point, your parents have already paid their house off. Now, what you're doing is you purchased the place, you're renting it out, it's paying itself off. Within a year, you can purchase another property, so that by the time your parents give you their property or they give you their property portfolio, you're only adding to your portfolio. Yeah. Because they've created space for you to now start creating wealth. So in my case, for example, my daughters already know you're not getting your inheritance until you've proven to me that you can invest yourselves, that you can build a property portfolio yourselves. I'm not just going to hand it over to you. You're going to be in a trust. So the people, you know what I'm saying? So the ones who are responsible will be voted into the chairmanship of that trust and will be the ones who are the custodians of the wealth of this family. You can't sell this stuff out. You can't get this up because you're giving up family wealth. You're not supposed to be doing
that. I think if you do it, you got to put that in your will, because I've seen so many friends of mine who came into wealth at 25 years old because grandpa died or grandma died or whatever. And I'll never forget, like, I was working with a friend of mine, and he was coming into because he was reaching his 25th birthday, and he was freaking out, full of anxiety. And I'm like, what the heck is wrong with you? And he was like, I'm afraid because I'm about to get like this lump sum of all this money, and my whole family's looking at me like, what are you going to do? And his older brother had blown his. So for me, and it's funny because at that time I was studying money. I literally was like, I don't know if it's grandpa or whatever, but one of the things that you should do that is actually loving, it's not mean, but it's loving to do, is add a codicil to your will that says you have to take this financial course. It's already paid for. All you have to do is take the test and pass, but you have to pass. You have to take this financial class, and maybe it's a 6-month class on money. For me, I would put my kids through Financial Peace University because that's what they need. But it'd be like, you can absolutely add stuff to it that's basically saying, by the time you inherit what I am giving you, you will also have a mindset that allows you to take care of it in the way that you need to take care of it. And just like you said, you can also put something in there that says, you can't sell I remember there was one wealthy family that they would make it to where you could only sell like in the third generation or something. It's like every third generation you had an opportunity if you wanted to move something or whatever like that. So do you know what I mean? My point is that we don't study what the rich do, so we don't know what they do. And it's very easy to find out what they do. Start asking questions, start reading books. There's so much information out there. It's just what we're studying is stupid. The stuff that we allow to consume our time is ridiculous. We are in the information age. All of this information is out there. A lot of it, you can get it for free. And it's just, where do you put your time and your attention? So I'm with you on that. I'm with you on the pooling resources, and I'm also with you on the having some sort of a stipulation when they inherit. And it could even be you're not allowed to sell. You can put a renter in there, and because the renter is in there, and because it's all cash, it's all paid off, whatever the renter brings in, you can use as income, but you're not allowed to sell.
Yeah. A concern that a lot of parents have for their daughters and for their sons even is that once they get married, there's always the risk that their spouse may, steal the property, or they may lose it in a divorce, and so on and so forth. Put your properties in trust. Put the wealth in trust.
Yeah.
You have to do that.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. In all honesty, well, I'll let you finish it. Put the wealth into trust, you were saying.
Yeah. Put the wealth into trust. That way the family's wealth is protected and your children are protected as well as your grandkids. You need to understand something. Like we talk about how the wealthy think. A lot of the principles that the wealthy people practice are actually biblical principles. When you go and read the book, like the books of law from Exodus to Numbers to Deuteronomy, and you read what they have to say about property, there is nothing nice about property or wealth management. They're very clear. Do not move the boundary stones. For example, you're not allowed to move boundary stones. That is theft. If a person's been given a plot of land, you're not allowed to touch the widow's plot. You're not allowed to touch your neighbor's plot, move the boundary stone, and encroach on their property. You could get killed for that. You're not allowed to, if somebody loans you a portion of their land for a period of time, you can't just go there and occupy the land because this person owes you. By the 7th year, the year of Jubilee, you're supposed to forgive the person their debt, because the property is their means of getting wealth. If they're too foolish to use that property to make wealth, they will end up losing it through selling it somehow. But every effort is made and every instruction is given in the Bible for you to hold on to your property, because this is generational wealth. That's the first thing. The second thing is, even when it comes to borrowing money within the family, you're not supposed to just give money and walk away and say, well, because we're blood, you're not supposed to pay me back. They are supposed to pay you back. Mm-hmm. Because it's a principle. If they get used to just receiving from you all the time, what incentive do they have to work? Remember, every man's going to work, by the sweat of your brow, eat by the sweat of your brow. Yeah. So we need to start being wiser, especially the ladies in the family who think matriarchy, being big mama in the family, means that you have to, run a charity program for the men in the family. You're not supposed to be doing that. No. That's a form of control, and that's a form of abuse. You need to be getting these guys to do what they're doing. You need to be building where you're supposed to be building for yourself and for your kids, and then everyone else in the family will be doing the same. We don't carry each other. We lean on each other for support, but we don't carry each other.
Right.
That only happens in a marriage when the husband carries the wife. That's it. But as siblings, no, that doesn't happen. And lastly, I just want to add or reiterate, the parents are the ones who are supposed to leave something for the kids. Mm-hmm. If you are living off your kids in your old age, you have failed as a parent. That's hard to hear, and I know it flies in the face of culture and tradition. But if you're living off your kids now, we don't want to hear anything about, I sacrificed when they were kids. You were supposed to.
Right, that was your job. You decided to have kids. Yeah.
You're not supposed to. I don't want to go.
No, it's true. No, listen. A good man leaves an inheritance to their children. The fact of the matter is, that's what you're supposed to be working on, and it's one of the measures. There are multiple measures, but that's one of the measures of being a good person. Is your burial plot paid for, or are they going to have to do an offering to bury you? You know what I mean? Do you have life insurance? Is the property paid off? And this is another thing I've had people showing up with recently is these reverse mortgages. Warn your elders about reverse mortgages. They are taking advantage of people, calling them up, and if your elders are in any way experiencing some form of dementia, or if all of their cognitive skill sets and their reasoning is not as strong and sound as it should be, keep them away from the phone and keep them away from the emails. I'm just saying unsupervised, because there are entire industries that are preying on our elders just to get them to sign something over. And so a reverse mortgage, I've never seen a situation where it was good. All that I've seen is they say your property is paid off? Okay, what? You need a little bit of money? Your Social Security is not doing so great? Okay, well, we can figure out a way to help you to stay in your home and still make some money, until the day you die. Problem is, the money that you're making is off of the property value, so you're borrowing against the property value, and the moment that you die, they come in and take that property. So then you're not leaving anything for your children. And that completely paid off house is now something that, it took you 30 years to purchase, and as soon as you die, it's gone. So, and I'm also trying to say, for the families that I have had the pleasure of experiencing, both black and white, who have been middle class and upper class, who have done well generationally, and they don't have no problems in the 30s, 40s, 50s, because grandma and great grandma left something. That's what it is. I keep going back to stocks and property. If granddad bought the property at $50,000 and he died 50 years later, that property's worth like $1 million. Now all of a sudden the kids have $1 million. You know what I mean? And they can't even catch up to it because their parents still have stuff too. And because granddad did well, and the money went down, it didn't go up. And by that I mean he had his job, he did his thing, he took care of himself, and then all he left was abundance. He didn't leave bills, he left blessings, and that's what it's supposed to be. And then if you imagine the parents are leaving blessings too, and nobody's had an issue there, and then you got kids too, the kids are going to do nothing but do well. The other thing I want to say is I know of a family who, because we were talking about buying a big house. I'm not against the American dream. I'm not against buying a big house. I'm talking about how do you get there realistically, and how do you get there without doing anything illegal or, like I said, having a mic in your hand, etc. You can do that by purchasing things, like I said, in your 20s. If you are purchasing properties in your 20s while your friends are buying drinks and Louboutins, you know what I mean? You're going to be ahead of the game. I literally know a family who I love, who is a Black family, who the husband started this, and he started in his 20s, and he's in his 60s now. He's married to his childhood sweetheart. They have a beautiful family with multiple children, and all the children are very well educated, and everybody's doing very well, and ain't nobody hurting. Everybody's doing very, very well. And these children, even though they're all educated and doing super well on their own right now in their 20s and 30s, when their father passes, he owns 50 freaking houses that he bought from way back there.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the inheritance that these kids are going to have? And it's only like 4 kids.
Yeah.
And this is a Black family. Yeah. I'm saying we're not investing properly. We're not thinking properly. And I'm like, they don't, it's like Kofi was saying, they don't even need the money right now. You know what I mean? Like, the kids are all doing well. But that head start that man did, leaving an inheritance for his children's children, is literally going to go to his children's children, is what I'm trying to say.
Part of the reason, and just to get back to...
I'm sorry, and the last thing I'll say about that, a lot of those houses were in the hood. I just... I need to say that. A lot of the properties he bought were in the hood. So you all need to, start thinking about rehabbing and refurbishing things too. There's a lot of banks that will give you loans to buy something in the hood and fix it up. Okay, I'm done. Go ahead.
Look, we need to understand something. Corporate America, the corporate world, thrives off Black blood. Don't think, the major economies are sustained by the first world nations. They're not. They're sustained by us. They're sustained by our land, our forests, our rivers,
resources, natural resources,
our minerals, all of that. It's our stuff. And then on top of that, as if that's not enough, our consumerism.
That's the worst one right there. We spend more money than anybody else.
Look, like, if they're not taking our culture, repackaging it and selling it to other markets, then they're taking they're taking our culture, tweaking it a little bit and selling it back to us.
It's so funny how that works. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what they do. So just to go back to what Danai was saying, the hoods are ours, quote unquote. In reality, they're not. Like, real estate, if you do your history on what real estate really means, real estate, royal estate, it belongs to, the elite. But on a surface level, you can own it enough and do enough with it to create wealth for yourself.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. Even the word mortgage, for example, it means engaged to death, meaning up until you die. Even if you've paid off the property, you're still paying property taxes and the like on it. So until you die, they're still profiting off you with that property. But it's still a much better proposition than renting.
Darn snippy.
Yeah.
And you can get rich doing it. That's my whole point. I'm like, listen, we're all part of these systems anyway. You might as well make the system work for you.
But the point I'm trying to make here is, firstly, buy the hood, okay? And then instead of waiting for them to gentrify, let's start making those decisions ourselves, because we have the power to do that. Once we get together and get into that mindset of collaborating and cooperating with each other, It'll take some time, but if we start teaching our kids that mindset now, we put ourselves in a much healthier position for the future and the generations to come.
Absolutely. We're not going to achieve anything without collaboration. We're not going to achieve anything without coming together as a people and deciding, you know, what is important to us and prioritizing it, you know. Umoja.
That's the first thing. The second thing is getting back to the whole single income model. The reason why so many of us, especially men, are panicking about being the sole provider in the family is because, like Denai said, we have not planned for that kind of life. It is possible in this day and age to sustain a family off one income, but it's not something you can do or start doing, you know, when you meet the love of your life and decide, well, okay, fine, we're getting married in 2 years' time. Let's, you know, you quit your job and let's, you know, live off your income. It needs to start happening from the time you're still in high school. So for the parents amongst us who have kids, you should be grooming them from junior high how to manage money. Then from high school, if they are working odd jobs, summer jobs and the like, teach them what to do with that money. Teach them where to put that money. By the time they hit their 20s, they're still staying at home with you. They've purchased properties, okay? And those properties are bringing in an income. See how we're building towards something now. By the time they get married, let's say they get married in their late 20s, early 30s, they already have a property portfolio. They have stocks. They have other investments that are bringing in income. And then they have their job or their business as well. Now your son can bring a wife in and say, you don't have to work at a corporate, but you can take this money, invest it for us because you have a track record of working with money. You know how to take money, flip it, make it more. You're a multiplier. This is what you're supposed to be doing for them.
That's the other thing I was going to say, that you have to marry a wife, and you have to think about, we're not thinking, like, so many of our men are caught up in, you know, a big booty and, you know, and a smile or a pretty face or whatever. And it's like, that is not going to get this. Like, big booties are expensive. No offense. Like, that stuff costs. It really does. And I'm saying, what I'm really saying is, if you are not picking a wife, and by a wife, I mean someone you are equally yoked with, someone who is a purpose mate, someone who is a vision mate, who catches the vision, then yes, your wife can be the #1 downfall of you're not going to accomplish any of this. You're not going to achieve any of it. She can fight you the entire way. She can be, you're trying to, you know, save to put something down on this little thing you saw that came up, you know, 3 miles down the road, and it came up on sale and you're ready to do that. And she's blown it on, baby, I bought us 2 tickets to Dubai, you know, all expenses, everything, and full champagne the whole way. And you're like, okay, we've got $10,000 we just put over here to do something like that so we could fly on the gram. But that building just came up for $10,000, and that's all I needed in order to get it. And I can't do that now. I'm saying you do need somebody who is more interested in your future, which is why I said one of the very first things you guys are going to have to do is sacrifice. You're going to need somebody who is like-minded, who understands sacrificing right now for the long term. It doesn't mean you can never have luxury or Louboutins or anything. It means let's get this foundation down so we can look up 10 years. And when we buy, then we're not charging it. It's not our last dollar. It's not, you know, in lieu of us having, you know, an emergency fund. Like, when we buy it 10 years down the line, because we've been in this life acquiring wealth, now we can actually afford it.
Yeah. That's where we need to be. It's not impossible to live off one income, one, you know, job salary, you know. And when we say one salary or one income, you know, that's usually what we're referring to, the work or the job or the business. But you should have been building up different streams of income from young. And even if you're only starting now, good, start now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You need to pick a wife who is also going to be responsible with your money, who's not going to just be spending everything willy-nilly. But not just that, you know, I always say when we're talking about like fasting or, you know, areas where we're trying to deal with our flesh, and we're in these conversations, that anytime you put something down spiritually, you got to pick something up if you're ever going to actually advance. So on one hand, you need a wife who's not spending all the money, but just not spending the money is still not enough. You have to have a wife who is also enterprising enough that she knows how to grow the money. And if she doesn't know, she starts to study. I'm saying this is not anything. Listen, the Beardstown ladies were a bunch of old ladies that had nothing to do but study the stock markets, and they outperformed the markets and the best investors on Wall Street over and over and over again. They've done it, and I hate to embarrass you, but like 5th grade classes who decide they're going to study the stock market have also outperformed Wall Street. I'm telling you, it's not that you can't, it's that you haven't even tried. So if you're staying at home, and we don't have kids yet, my job is, what can I do to help? Because I'm a helper. We got one salary. How can I help this to become even more abundant? What can I do with what he's giving me to take it in, incubate it, multiply it, give it back?
What Danai
Go ahead.
In a nutshell, what Danai is saying in a nutshell is the reason why so many of you are afraid to let this woman quit her job is because you know that she is not capable of making money. It's that simple. The reason why you don't want to marry her is because you know she wants to help you. You know, but you're keeping her around because the booty is juicy.
Hey, say it.
The lips are juicy. You know, like, hey, she looks good on my arm. My friend, your bank account is suffering. Okay. Your children's future is suffering. You're spending money. Hey, Oga, the money that should be going towards the inheritance of your children is going towards weekends in Milnet in Cape Town, Vodacom, Durban, July. I heard of some dude. So, like, there's an event that takes place in South Africa every year called the Vodacom Durban July, and it's a horse racing event. And it's, you know,
they've got here like the Bev Clicquot Classic. I think they even have the Classic in South Africa as well. I think in Joburg.
Well, you guys have the Met, right?
Yes.
I think it is. Yeah. Okay, so like it's almost like the Met.
Mm-hmm.
And one guy, black dude. So like, it used to be a largely white event, and then we went and took it over. Because, you know, I mean, you know, it's our time. This guy drives from Johannesburg to Durban, okay, with a 72-car convoy. All his cars. A 72-car convoy.
Wow.
In which world does this make sense? Are you Solomon?
You got one but you got 72 cars. I don't.
You got 72 cars. So, you know, it's this kind of thinking that we need to move away from, because the young boys are seeing guys like this pulling these stunts and thinking like that's the move.
That's
it's not the move.
That's exactly what they do.
You know, we've seen these guys come and go. You know, they show up, they stunt hard for 2-3 years, then they go marry some young floozy who cleans them out. And then it's like, you know, back to the mama's back rooms. There was one guy who was a multi-millionaire. We're talking about fortune between 50 and 100 million, you know, rand, or possibly more. And this dude just blew the cash. Instead of buying properties, he went and rented out a penthouse.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. I saw that recently too, where there was a guy on a YouTube video, and I clicked on it just because the title looked weird. I'd never seen him before, but apparently he was an influencer, and his whole video is him saying, they're kicking me out of my place. So he does the whole video. He's walking us around this beautiful penthouse. It's a gorgeous penthouse. He tells us he was paying anywhere between, I think, $3,000 and $5,000 a month for, like, he said, for like the last 10 years. And immediately all I thought was,
Idiots.
Who was advising you? Who was advising you? And then he's like, you guys, the owner came back. They said they gave me 30 days notice because, you know, the lease was only for, I guess, his first year or whatever. And then after that, it was month to month. So either you can leave or they can kick you out because they own it, like, depending on. And one day they just decided that they wanted to do something. Oh, we're done.
Yeah.
All right. I'll finish the story when we come back.
Yeah, I can do 1 more hour. Let's go. Okay, now it wants to take its time to wind down. You know what?
Of course it does.